This is the One Piece Podcast, episode 796 for the week of Monday, November 20th, 2023. It's SGS week. My name is Steven.
And my name is Greg. And, Steven, there almost wasn't an SGS this week.
Oh, we're gonna admit the dirty laundry behind that.
I have no problem admitting this. That
okay.
We were scheduled for a time. And we kind of did we'll be ready, right? It'll be fine. I proceeded to not put any note in my calendar, and then I think I record it like my time at like 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. or something like that. I proceeded to wake up at 10 o'clock and just have a normal fucking day. and around 1 p.m. I get a note from Zach. He's like, did you guys have the SGS this week? Just like,
yeah.
Oh no, I'm so sorry, Steven.
And that's when, Catherine O'Hara in Home Alone, you just like, whoa, Kevin,
Steven, Simba.
Yeah. Well, we're all here. We're all fine. It's all good. Funny story. So a couple months ago, you told the story about going on your road trip to Costco, and your wife said, "Oh, let's put on the episode," and then proceeded to fall asleep,
yes.
Basically to nod off. Oh, you guys are just you're too chill. It's just too relaxing.
Yep.
And so my wife does listen to episodes of the podcast, and she usually does it when she's driving to and from work. And she came home one day and was like, "That story was so cute about Greg's wife." And I'm like, "Oh, you heard that part. Okay. And then I was like, "Wait a second. You're driving. You're alone in the car when you're, driving back and forth from work. Are you okay? Like, is it putting you to sleep? Like, I don't want you to get into a car accident." And she said, "Oh, no, it's perfect because, actually it centers me and it keeps me calm so that my road rage doesn't explode." Different strokes for different folks, whether you've got, insomnia problems or road rage. We're here to soothe you with our calm voices.
A podcast for the ages.
Yes, truly. And speaking of voices, however, I'm going to come clean here. So in my recent history here this past month, I just was on a nice vacation, a little family vacation for about a week or so. And because of that, I'm behind on all my podcasts. Basically, I had to frantically rush through my schedule, try to clear up as many things as possible so that I didn't have to worry about work while I was out of town. And then, of course, I was out of town for the week, and so I've been missing a lot of the podcasts and trying to catch up and such. So I don't necessarily know what all has been discussed in the last couple of weeks on the podcast, and it's wonderful, just like clockwork. It's been a couple days since I got back. And then I woke up this morning and I was like, oh God, my throat hurts. So I don't know. I'm not feeling too congested. So hopefully, it won't be noticeable on for the listening experience for all you folks who are tuning in. But I think because of that, we are probably going to try to restrain ourselves a little bit in terms of length, which might be difficult because there's been a lot of stuff happening in the manga the last couple of weeks to talk about. Some of which is not even content of the manga itself, but we'll get into what's going on with Oda. We'll try to see if we can shed some light on that. So we'll see how it goes this week.
3 days later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I always say this. We're going to keep ourselves, short this week. But with that out of the way,
Can I just piggyback off that for a second?
Yeah.
And you may spare your voice here, but I think the world needs to know this about how close the universe came to a crossing of Greg and Steven. Steven knows what I'm about to get into here, but for sake of Steven's own privacy, I won't get too into the details of where it went, blah, blah. But Steven just mentioned that he was on vacation, and up until not too long ago, it turned out that my wife and my family from New Jersey were going to be on vacation in the same location at the same hotel by complete coincidence, not 3 days apart. We would have missed each other at not only the same location, but the same hotel by 3 days in a place that is very far away from both of us.
From both of us, yeah. Yeah.
It almost close. Almost got it. Tangent to perfection. But next time.
Yeah. What would that have been like if it had been like, like leaving it coming the same day that we just ran into each other at the door?
It's been the Spider-Man point.
Yeah. So with all of that out of the way, why don't we take a quick ad break here, and then we'll talk about the manga.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do some, I guess, manga recap. I guess we could call it that. It's been done before, but we can do that. This will be for chapters 1096, 1097, and 1098, which were the last three that Oda got in between breaks, just barely. And it's an interesting discussion, perhaps. But I will lead off with a quick synopsis of what happened in these chapters. Starting in 1096. Garp rushes to God Valley as the Hunger Games begin. Well, not quite. Ginny gets word to the outside, and Childhood Kuma takes on the mission of finding the Devil Fruit prizes for the God Valley contest. The Rocks Pirates, Roger Pirates, and Garp all show up, but we don't see much of it. Kuma eats the paw fruit and frees many of the slaves, and later Ginny and Kuma are starting a happy life in a rundown church at the Sorbet Kingdom. Then in 1097, Kuma is going to painstaking lengths with his paintaking powers. Hey, how do you like that? Not wanting to burden his family with the curse of the Buccaneer bloodline, Kuma refuses to marry Ginny. The evil King Bekori's scheme radicalizes Kuma into joining the Freedom Fighters, which transforms them into the Revolutionary Army. And then Ginny, now grown up, the captain of the Eastern Forces of the Revolutionary Army, which is now a position held by Bello Betty, gets captured. And in 1098, the most recent chapter, Ginny escapes from captivity from the Celestial Dragons and dies, leaving a baby Bonnie behind. Kuma eventually retires from the Revolutionary Army to care for Bonnie in the church due to her sapphire scales disease. A doctor tells Kuma that Bonnie will die by age 10, but in a bit of a telephone game mishap, he feels pressured to lie and tell Bonnie that she will be cured by age 10 instead. And lastly, King Bekori is up to his old tricks in murdering his own citizens. So, smack in the middle of the Kuma flashback.
That's such a tough thing, when Kuma and his adopted daughter are separated like that. He always wants to get back to her, but his Bonnie lies over the ocean.
Man.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll do. So I guess 1096 observations and whatnot. I think the two of us are going into this having not, unfortunately, I'm so sorry, listened to the podcast proper. So I don't know, if we're going to retread anything, but maybe that'll be fun for listeners who didn't catch that episode, or going to. But 1096 has a lot of little fun details. And I didn't go too nuts with this. I didn't go down too many rabbit holes or try to theorize too much. But let's see if we can go in some sort of order. Stephen, I have not read your translation for this, but what was your take on Figerland's Miteiro Kodomotachi? And I don't know if you know what I'm intimating here.
Yeah, are you suggesting that he has some knowledge of what might be in the chests, perhaps? Is that, are we talking about a Shanks thing? Or?
No. No? Possibly. Now, this is, I kind of get I'm going to go down a little bit of a mini rant here, and you don't need to, if your voice is, et cetera, don't feel free to not chip in, but I'm starting in the past couple of years to really understand, especially since the live action started, understand how Oda feels when people come to him with ideas and theories, and the kind of pulling back the curtain a little bit is he doesn't really like it, because he doesn't like his theories to be A, found out, and then B, someone to say that was mine, that was my idea that I put forward, and it influenced him, or it did this or did that. And more people are coming to me with ideas, and it's tough to say that was mine, or I came up with that, or I enjoyed that theory, or it's tough to comment on them. Now I think a couple weeks ago we talked about the Luffy 420 thing, and that I no idea, it's a little bit of a thing in the Japanese community as well, but linking it to the planets that was very clever. This is something that I caught, and unfortunately was brought up to me later. Hey, Greg, this person is saying this, and what do you think about this? And it's a little bit I wish you didn't, bring that up to me, because now I have to, whenever I say I thought of this too, it's a little bit awkward. But that's just a little bit of a mini rant. I apologize for that, but that's why I know people have brought this up, and it's been sort of a thing in the community, but this is also something that, yes, Japanese readers are also discussing themselves. What I'm talking about is, who is Shanks calling children when he says Kodomotachi? Who is he addressing? Excuse me. Who is Garland? And I think I called him Garland before too. I'm playing too much Final Fantasy.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, the Garland thing was Oda. He put that accidentally into one of these. In fact, in this chapter, that it's Garling in the front page here with this guy who says, "I'm not going to let you win, Garling." But then a couple pages later, when he's cutting people down, it says Garando.
No freaking way! Are you serious?
Yeah.
Are you serious? I didn't even know. Oh my God, that's great. It totally does. That's hilarious. What did you do for that? Did you just correct it to Garling?
No, it's Garland in the English. I mean, I assume I'm 99.99% sure he's just gonna fix that for the volume, and we'll change it back too. But it's not the first time we've had things where it's I'm not sure if this is right, but I'm just gonna have to go with it because I don't know for sure.
Oh, dude, you got to ask me that next time. I'm totally going to bother Anayama-san about that. I'm going to be like, have you been playing too much Final Fantasy?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If you don't know what we're talking about, we're nerds, and we're talking about Final Fantasy Boss from Forever. Okay, so yeah, who is he calling children here when he says Kodomotachi, children? Is he it does, because it doesn't seem like he's he could be insulting, right, the other families, but in that case, why is he then using Kodomotachi and not something more insulting,
Gakidomo or whatever,
Gakidomo or something like that? And this goes back to the does Shanks have any siblings?
Mm.
And that's something I've been on for a minute. You know, when there is a figure that meets with the elders, and we see that, you know, it's revealed to be Shanks, and they have a discussion. Since that time, I've had the question, since we didn't see the other side of that face, we do not have a confirmation that that is Shanks. We don't see the scar. So are there, when he says Kodomotachi, are there any other siblings? And I was just wondering if you did anything fancy for that or not.
No, I think it was just, you know, like watch this, children, or something like that. But it is, yeah, it feels a little strange as a taunt to the other competitor. Like, he's not that old. Like, he's, you know, they're probably just as many of them are older than him as he are older than them. So they feels,
do look pretty young.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
Finally, another people who wanted Kong back in the story.
Yeah.
This is your moment. Seeing Garp on his time off is also very cool. Just kind of chilling out like Luffy would, like grandpa, like grandson. What did you think about the confirmed target on Kuma's back? How cool is that?
Oh yeah, the
Mato eteru. His famous line from when he first shows up in the comic is "You're on target," or I think that's on target, and I forget what it is exactly in English, but like that's on target.
I didn't even think of that. That's what an Easter egg.
That's cool, isn't it? Yeah. He has that's his thing. That's his kuchiguse, and it's not his necessarily his best known one, because I think he's known these days more for you know, if you're going on a trip, where would you go? Which became kind of his thing. But before that, it was Mato eteru, which was just kind of a strange thing to say. And he also had the target design on his clothing, which basically is that, I think I wrote about this. I think this is one of my columns, if not my next one. But it's like essentially his life. He has made himself the target.
Yeah, the walking target. Yeah.
It's, oh my God, what a guy. Really, really fantastic kind of linking together of his themes for design. And, you know, if some of it was retconned, it's been done so seamlessly that you can't even, I mean, it's just chef's kiss, whether he intended it or not. It's beautiful. Some more stuff. We find out about the devil fruits, right? And that was cool. What else did I want to say here as we go through? Of course, you know, seeing the rocks screw together like this. I mean, what a panel. Just to be able to see this kind of force together at one time. Just remarkable. I'm going to hit you with a really big question here, and I could be completely off. But what do you think about the possibility of Rocks also being a gum fruit user? Have we learned anything that makes that impossible? And I ask because of the whole kind of the sense of how it's almost like a Luffy here, where it's like, I'm going ahead, follow me, people. And then like, does he literally just gum rocket into the fray? Because it's a very like Luffy-like kind of being led into battle. Now, what we don't have is almost the entire series leading up to this point are the people who have encountered Luffy making some sort of winking, you know, statement, like, so you have the same as him, or like the you know, there's nothing like that. So there's no clues. The only thing I'm basing that on is the fact that this whole like charging into battle and then being completely absent over the sea seems like a very Luffy-like thing. And I was just wondering if we've learned anything that makes that impossible. I don't know if we have or not.
I mean, yeah, given what we know, I guess, about the mechanism of of regrowing the fruit. Of course, that would make in that case you can't bring Rox back as a character, say like, oh, now he's been in hiding all these years and
right,
now he's alive and
unless you go the clone route.
Unless you go the clone route, which I think gets significantly messier. But yeah, we do have a person in this group who has been cloned. So,
yeah.
But at the same time, she is, speaking of Stussy, Miss Buckingham Stussy, she has, ties to the government and stuff, which doesn't sound like it would fit with what we know of Rox. So, that one's probably not so likely. But yeah, I don't know.
It's probably Whoop Slap, right? Whoop Slap is probably Rox. He's the Rox clone.
Yeah, that's
comes
right.
Back to that.
It will be interesting to see, kind of similar to the parallels that have been drawn between Luffy and Roger. If there are other similar parallels between Luffy and Rox and how they may be contrasted and compared.
Yeah.
Because he's certainly being built up to be an interesting figure. And of course, last time we talked, we're thinking, wow, look, is he going to show us the whole God Valley? Are we going to see everything here? And as it turned out, we got the we got the previously on Lost digest version where we got about 15 seconds of it before
we got the first Marvel teaser where they're gonna change it when it's the real story.
Yeah,
they're gonna alter scenes. Just commenting on the crew here. Great to see Shiki. This would appear to be well after Shiki met. Time-wise, yes, of course. But also in the depiction of the characters, well after he met what was her name, Higurashi. Because he appears, much as he does in the movie. So yeah, he's much older here. Captain John, of course, almost identical pose. How he appeared, his corpse appeared in Thriller Bark, drinking. Gloriosa. Interesting note about Gloriosa, for me at least, is that she's got to be pretty old here. Because it's not that long ago. Like, it's a long time ago, but like she is old in the main storyline where we are right now in the timeline. So she's, and look at Shaki, like Shakuyaku, right? Like Shaki is she's also pretty in her years. So like Gloriosa, like their longevity is something else, and I think that's something Oda does on purpose.
Yeah.
Not like it's a great secret or anything, but it's just like the joke is like the Kuja can keep their youth for quite some time. So I'm gonna say that she's probably up in her years there, unless there's been like some Viver card reveal that has her age. I have no idea in that case, but also some of these other figures here. And when you and I first discussed this chapter, we were like the dude in the bottom left. We're like that's very, very well that could be Silver Axe, right? Like if Oda's going to tease him, like that's a good way to tease that Silver Axe.
Right.
The giant here I originally thought was Stenson, and Stenson is the giant that was rescued at the human auction. However, looking back in Captain John stuff, because I was showing some of my coworkers, I was look, it's the same pose as here and here. When you look at some of those reveals, the other general zombies, there is a general zombie that is almost identical to this giant-looking dude with the beard. He looks like he's from Elbaf.
Yeah.
In addition to that, you also have some other characters. Like you got a dude with the long claws. There was also a long claw general zombie. I think there's there he is. There's a fishman-looking dude who's also, I think, a general zombie that is in like this, like, oh God, what's their names? The Dark Souls bosses, the duo that you fight, Ornstein and Smo.
Smo,
He looks like Smo armor. So it's very possible that Moria actually had a number of Rock's bodies that he used for the General Zombies. That's not confirmed anywhere yet, but they seem really similar.
There's a lot of evidence, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that when Oda was looking for Captain John references, he was just like, "Oh, wait, yeah, they were there too. So maybe I'll just put them in the crew." That seems like a very Oda thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Then you've got the Assault. I don't know if you have any commentary on Assault, but I personally don't. Other than the fact that he put what's his name back in here. He's another Kong and this guy, which is not Capone. Maltese Falcon. What's the dude's name? Garp's.
Bogard.
Bogard.
Yeah.
Bogart. That's probably from the live action. Like Oda was like, I forgot about that guy.
Yeah, could be.
He skips over the thing as you said, which is brilliant. It's a great way to leave the events of that for another time. To kind of hype us for that and set that up so that when he does do the eventual reveal of what occurred there, he doesn't need to do a terrible deal of setting up, which is a very good idea on his part. What a move. Now we see, and this is another cool Easter egg, these two jerks who are trying to make fun of Kuma, right? Did you notice who they are?
Which page is this?
Right at the very end here, last two pages, the two little jerks.
Oh, yeah.
Throwing rocks at Kuma.
Yeah, I remember seeing the images, but it's been a couple of weeks now, so I forget.
Is this something that people pulled out again? Because this is another one where I was just like, going through, I was just like, aha. These are two members of Bonnie's crew.
Bonnie's crew, that's right. Okay.
And we see them through the flashback. He's got basically the same hat, and he has a big beard, the dude with the hat. And the other dude with the mohawk, it's just he has a much more elongated mohawk. But we've seen them with Bonnie in the present timeline, and they are well, we'll get into that later about their ages and whatnot. But yes, it's kind of cool to see that kind of link up here, and we even see some more of their self-sacrifice for Kuma in future chapters. So good on you, Oda. Nice job.
Yeah. Be nice to know their names or something else about them, but
there's probably like a Viver card. I'm so behind on the Viver card stuff. I was looking up the other day for some information for Skypiea stuff, and it turns out that the jerk king who had Nolan killed, he has a name. It's like Yutayanka or something like that.
Yeah,
because he had
told you so or whatever.
Yes, exactly. Because he had a line like that. So
yeah. He's got to do it.
And then here they are actually in 1097. That's them. Is that both of them? Yeah, that's both of them
on the cover.
Cover.
Yeah, that's true.
And 1097 is I was reading this with a friend, and as they were going through the chapter, they were like, "Wow, like Bonnie's Kibishi," and I was just like, just wait for it. And then later in the chapter, we get to reveal how he does he takes all that pain unto himself.
Yeah. Man.
What a guy. Again, making himself the target. And that's why she's all, angry about everything. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember I feel like there was a lot of like sort of joking about where when he removes the pain from people, does it just float around? Like, is somebody just going to walk into it's like a cold spot in the air or something, you just walk in and say, oh god, something hurts a lot, and this is such a clean way to tie that that loose end that is in character for Kuma, for him to to take on that sacrifice. What a great story detail. Yeah.
This is why we got that messy, sloppy intro. with like, hi, this is Kuma, this is his parents. Now he's older. Now he's a little bit older. Now he's a little bit older. Oh, now we're at this event. And it's just like, not the greatest intro Oda, but like obviously this is what he wanted to get to, this kind of storytelling.
Yeah.
That's pretty much 1097 for me. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I think he does a really good job. You have this stuff with the evil king Bekori, which is kind of interesting. It's one of those like I would have had to have come up with a completely different name to kind of translate the word play in there, but Bekori or Pekori is like it's sort of like it's partially the sound for bowing, like bowing and scraping, and that's kind of a reference to the fact that he's not technically a celestial dragon, but he's doing everything in his power to suck up to them to try to make his kingdom look better in their eyes, and just kind of how generally craven he is as a leader, and it's right there in his name, a very classic kind of One Piece thing that Oda does with the minor characters, where they have a very specific role, and sometimes they'll just put that right in the name, that tells you everything about their character.
Points for use of craven there. That's nice.
Yeah, well, I read a lot of Game of Thrones, so. But it's again, there's a lot of jumping back and forth, or not back and forth, but jumping ahead into different ages of Kuma's life. But there are so many different facets to his character, and so a lot of these here are showing how he gets radicalized through not just his childhood experience, but also the experience as a young adult of his homeland here, and the things that happen to it, and how he takes his his very caring nature and is sort of radicalized to take direct action to ease the suffering of others, and to stop the wickedness, which will tie into why he is so he's so close with Eva and Dragon in the revolutionary army, and I'm really just impressed. Every chapter that we get, I'm more impressed with how well it all kind of contextualizes these sort of different sides of Kuma that we've seen through the series, which were often maybe not confusing, but they didn't always necessarily add up to like, who is this guy? Like, why is he doing these things? What is the story behind him? And I'm just so impressed by how Oda is tying it all together here.
In many ways, it's the anti-Han Solo movie, isn't it? Because the Han Solo movie problem was that everything interesting that you know about Han Solo happened to him over the course of a weekend.
Yeah.
And this is everything interesting you know about Kuma happened to him over the course of his life.
Yes. Yeah.
Not the easiest thing I know to convert to a movie, but it's comparing two different things. But still, it's beautifully done here. Mm-hmm. Which I guess brings us to 1098. Now, reading this for the first time, I looked at the cover illustration, and I was just like, first I was just like, oh, Noda Skywalker. Oh, there's our Noda. Mm-hmm. Good to see him. And I completely blew over whatever was written on Brooke's legs, because I was just like, oh, it's a reference to some obscure song, or it's probably just some kanji that are can be read different way. I was like, I don't have time for whatever like little reference this is. I can look at this later. Turns out it's super important. 'Cause I should have bothered reading it. But I literally just glanced at it and sped right through, to the next page. So, what does this say, Stephen?
Gomen ne genko agarimasen deshita, which means sorry, I did not finish the art in time. With a little autograph by Oda in the corner too.
Aw. That's sad.
It's it's really interesting because I feel like people who have read manga, specifically weekly manga, long enough have probably seen this sort of thing. I don't know if it happens as much these days, but there's definitely a period where, particularly, I mean, everybody who has been following Hunter x Hunter knows of, you know, the time when Togashi was starting to really lose the pace of his serialization, and then there would be, you know, chapters where it was just squiggle, like certain pages or panels would just be like stick figures or whatever, or, you know, here's the background and it's just, you know, he just like scribbled something and you're like, I don't know what this is, it doesn't look like anything. And it is the sort of thing that does sometimes happen, but somehow, you know, for 1,097 chapters, it never happened with Oda, and I'm really curious to know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's not really a particularly interesting or revealing story. Maybe it was just like, you know, the schedule was really pinching him, and he didn't want to have to do an emergency cancellation. But yeah, I'm just, it's so interesting that, you know, it's like, oh, this could happen to Oda too. Like it just seems so novel, so different from his usual style.
Yeah. I don't know if you want me to comment on that now or later, whether we have any SGS questions about that or not.
I don't think we have an SGS question about it. So
okay. Well, in that case, I have no idea. I have zero idea what went on here. And I'm really not interested in asking him or the editorial department about it, unless it comes up in conversation sometime. I'm sure I will hear about it, but it's not something that I particularly wanted to bother them about, because if it's a sore subject, then me asking about it is not going to help anything.
No.
I don't think it's anything serious. I mean, if you look at the timeline of like events, like this would have been in production around the time of the 25th anniversary celebration that they had for the anime. For
the anime
that took place at, I think it was like the Sumo Museum or something. Like it would have been right around there that they were working on this in the stages of this. So it's very possible that it was just like, yeah, he had an event and it was busy, and he's now, you know, quite older, so he was just like, well, sorry, I can't really get to it. But I mean, the first thing he does is apologize to the fans. Is just like, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
There are no hems and haws. It's just like, hey, sorry about it. But you know, it's like the other thing is like, you know, he does this upfront apology about it. It's like what, like maybe 2 or 3 pages with a couple panels that are rough. It's not like the entire chapter is terribly rough looking.
Well, the interesting thing too is like he made sure that even the panels that weren't finished in terms of like line art, they were still like, if you've seen the they don't really do it very often anymore, but you know, for the first 60 or so volumes of the series, you know, there was often like, here's in the books, you know, here's a draft page in between when they weren't doing an SBS in between chapters. You know, here's a draft page from this chapter or whatever. All the pre-time skip arcs got something like this. And if you've seen those, like his like pencil storyboard stuff is very abstract. Like sometimes you just have to kind of look at the general placement of shapes and be like, oh, okay, now I recognize what page this is, or what, you know, what scene this is. But the sketchy versions, like, you know, particularly the one page where you know, it's like Ivankov yelling into the Dendemushi and then Kuma in the corner, it's still very, very recognizable. It just kind of looks like he scribbled them twice with a pen or with a pencil instead of inking them delicately. The more noticeable thing, or the more frequent thing, is that it seems like I don't know if this was an intentional choice just to kind of make it clear that they weren't finished, but a lot of the stuff that would be like tones, it kind of seems like he just took like a charcoal pencil or something and just sort of shaded over them.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting choice. I've never quite seen that, but I feel like that was a bit of a shorthand. So who knows? It could have been that, the maybe one of the assistants, one of the main assistants got sick. The people who would be tidying up a lot of the screen tones and things, and so this was a stopgap measure if they were shorthanded or something, or if the schedule didn't line up for them. It's interesting to note that the first week of these three, this is the first time in a couple months, I think, that he's had 3 chapters in a row between breaks. He was dropping down to 2 or 1 with all of the the Netflix stuff and things like that. But the first chapter was 17 pages, which is his usual. The second chapter was 13 pages, which is quite a bit shorter. And then the third one, which already at that point I was like, ooh, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't say we're going to have a break, but it could be, I hope it's not like a 9-page chapter or something like that. But the third one, which was unfinished, was actually 15 pages. So he did squeeze out more material, even though it was, not all of the art was complete. So I think he was just really trying to get back into the swing of things, and they just kind of ran out of time. But I don't know. I guess it's not too much of a spoiler, I hope, to say that like when he comes back, the next chapter looks perfectly fine. Nothing. No pray for Oda really necessary here.
Yeah. But, if there was something severe, the world would probably hear about it. So.
Yeah, that too.
And if it came to that point, I would also be savvy to it as well. So I'd be like, yeah, worry, maybe worry a little bit, or maybe don't worry a bit. But in this case, I have no idea, and I don't really care to unless it's made my business. So
yeah.
The only thing I have to add about this one, but background is like, Steven actually has a role in making this chapter, and he doesn't know it. But of all the places and the characters, I was actually at a bar several chuhais in with my coworkers, and was feeling quite in my cups when I received a line message from the editor, and he was like, "Hello, sorry to bother you," and it's like 11 p.m. He's like, "Sorry to bother you so late at night." He's like, "But how do you spell Ginny in English?"
Okay, yeah, I see.
I was like, oh, let me check Steven. So I go check Steven's work, and I was like, okay, got it. Okay, Ginny. He's like, arigatou gozaimasu, tasukarimasu. And I was like, okay, guess I know we're getting either a name box or something in the next chapter. Not a name box, and not exactly how I expected to see it, but there it is.
Yeah. On the grave. Woof.
But that all of that, like, that's all business as usual. I mean, I usually get messages. Some of them are like 4 a.m. or like 3 a.m. So that's not even anything unusual there. So it's not like it was going later than usual, going earlier than usual. Everything was literally business as usual. So
yeah, sometimes you'll ask me for clarifications of things like that, and the pattern at this point is like, okay, so they need to double check this text because they want to put it in an upcoming chapter or something. Sometimes I get in a more long term stuff. Sometimes we'll get like a batch of questions from Toei, basically because it's like, oh well, this material from a year ago is about to come up in the anime, and they want to make sure they have all of this stuff covered in case they need to put it in the subtitles for the international partners like Crunchyroll. So yeah, we do get clarifications asked from time to time about things like this. And that's why you see things like, I think, when they put in the like Jay Garcia Saturn and stuff like that, like they're like, oh, well, we want to know because apparently Oda, when he made these giant long ass names for all of the the Gorosei, he didn't have specific English spellings in mind, so it helps to be in touch about details like that.
People would be super surprised at the number of times Oda's just like, I don't care.
Right.
do whatever you want. How does it? What is it? What should it look like? How does it sound good?
Yeah.
He's pretty chill about that stuff. But I think I've gone on long enough about 1098. I mean, it's easily my favorite chapter in the flashback by far, just because of how not his handling of Kuma, not his handling of Bonnie, but how Kuma handles Bonnie is just. I can't imagine being a father reading this. It would just melt me. And Kuma is now. He's basically my belle mare right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's what a remarkable story for him. All the stuff that he's been through. And I guess we'll see some. We're going to see some more because the flashback is not over, and of course they ends off with King Bekori is back at it, and it's like, oh great.
And he's got to become a king, so
exactly. Yeah, you have to imagine that this is probably going to tell us how Kuma became the king of Sorbet Kingdom. As for how that happens, it's like, well, that's it's not really clear yet. We just get the kind of inciting incident here, but interesting to have like this guy who kind of is in the story and then comes back. I think that was probably an issue of convenience for Oda to be able to explain why Kuma was involved in the Revolutionary Army, and then later why he became the king, because those two facts seem to be kind of at odds with each other as far as his background goes. But now it seems to all line up, which is again, it's the manga magic. It's somehow Oda manages to fit all these things together.
I don't know how he does it. I really it's a Tetris and Rubik's Cube at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about
yeah, go.
How about the Bonnie? When your disease is cured, where would you like to go?
Yeah.
Where would you like to travel? Ooh.
Yeah. She's got all these, and you see that it's not a one-off thing either. It's not that Han Solo weekend everything, because she's like, what is it? They have the conversation. It's like, oh wait a minute. And so when I'm 19, he's like, when you're 19, where are you going again? And she's like, oh, you promised to go to a Fishman Island. So this is a common theme with him of wanting to make her dreams come true of these travels.
Yeah.
It's not just this isn't one conversation that happened. This is who he is in their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
God.
Yeah.
Even down. The thing that I think got me the most was that her little. I guess it was supposed to. I don't know if it was a Band-Aid or it's scar, whatever it's supposed to be under her eye. That, I'm guessing, she had surgery. She either is covering it or she had surgery to remove it. Maybe some funkiness with the fruit, since we're talking about aging and whatnot. Don't really know exactly what the deal is there. But the fact that he brought that little design twerk into her full story, I mean, a super important part of her story is... I don't. It's unhinged. The fact that he could bring all of that together, to me. I mean, and this was not. I guarantee you that she had this little bandage or scar, whatever it is, under her eye, was not part of her full story when he introduced her in the Supernovas. Maybe the fact that she was, she had this relationship with Kuma, Kuma was already very firmly established. A lot of who Kuma was and what he stood for was very firmly established early on, even at the time that he first appeared in Volume 25.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that who Kuma was set in stone, but it's impossible that he did all of that with Bonnie at the time, and to pull even all those little aspects about her into this wildly important part of their story together blows me away. I'm sorry, I don't mean to gush so much, but like it is really impressive when you. I gotta stop. I'm just gonna keep waxing.
Yeah, Kuma was always a character that I feel like I said this earlier, but he was always kind of a bit of a cipher for me, where I was just like, I don't really know what makes him tick. Like he's such a striking figure when you first see him, but like, what does it mean? Why is he like this? What do all these different things that he does have in common? And it's just I never would have thought, especially having been set up so long ago, that that he had all of these ideas for how to fill in that blank of his backstory so cleanly. It is
Stephen, I get it for one character. I get it for Kuma. To be able to take that and apply it to another character that was added on a whim in the middle of his story.
Yeah.
Almost 25 volumes after the initial character. And I'm talking about Bonnie, Kuma here. But the 25, to have her introduced 25 volumes after he's introduced. And to have this level of connection between them is... I'm speechless. It's so beautiful, and it's such a the fact that even up until last week, we didn't have any idea that he wasn't the real father, or at least as far as we know, unless there's some kind of weird Nuge thing, or I don't know, there's something weird going on, which I don't think there is, but
no.
But as far as we know, he's not the real father, and he's doing this for her. Oh, it's heartbreaking. Oh, and that they never married. That was the thing. Is like, oh, I see they're going to get married. They're going to have a kid. No, oh my God, it's so well done. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, and here, see, this is what happens when you keep going, Stephen. You're going to let me go on. I'm going to do 10 minutes of just simping on Oda. We can't do this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess we could talk about that there is an issue of contention that this does reveal, and this is not necessarily new to this chapter in particular, but this is kind of the one that confirms, like, mathematically that Bonnie is, the Bonnie that we know today is seemingly, she's utilizing her age powers to be the age, or to present as the age that we assumed she was, and that other people, other characters in the story assumed she was, but that she's actually indeed a much younger than we assumed. And it's interesting because, like, there are definitely aspects of this that are, again, that were kind of set up, or were baked into her characterization even early on. And you look, like, what's the first image that we saw of her, right? It's in Shabondi, when she's chowing down, she's having a pizza party or whatever, and she's chowing down, and she's doing like a full-on man-spreading thing, right? Of like, there's a Japanese word, which is hashitanai, which is like, very unladylike, not unbecoming, is this very rude behavior, which is, just the antithesis of Yamato Nadeshiko, which is the classic graceful, reserved Japanese beauty, and Bonnie is the absolute opposite of that, and it gets reinforced when we get reunited with her at the the start of the Egghead arc, where you have these kind of surprising scenes where like they get dunked in the water and then she washes up and then she just like takes her shirt off to wring it out and stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess she's just cool with that. And now that you understand for sure that her characterization is that yes, she's a child, she's also kind of a tomboy here. Like you see her when she's like flipping off the kids who are calling her a vampire and stuff. So she is a very tomboy and clearly is like she hasn't reached an age or a certain level of socialization that would tell her like you're not supposed to do these things. And I think that all it circles back around. It finishes the closes that loop in a pretty clean way that you recognize, okay, that's kind of where Oda was coming from on these things. But at the same time, it's still like he is choosing to do this characterization in a way that is, I don't want to say it's like enticing the reader to view it as like titillating or like, ooh, like, hey, check it out, she's taking off her shirt, but because it's not presented in a like a seductive way in any it's very much as I said, like it's very much part of her character that she just doesn't know or care about this sort of stuff. But at the same time, like in terms of the message it sends to the reader, it gets a little iffy at that point, I think. I believe, again, as I said, I haven't listened to the last couple of weeks of the podcast, but I believe that was a big point of discussion for the previous episode about like, okay, so why is it exactly that we need these scenes of a person who looks like she's in her early 20s or late teens or something, but who is actually much younger, taking off her shirt and doing all these things that are typically considered fan service or like things to get excited about. It gets a little weird there, I think. And there might have been ways that Oda could have done that in a slightly different. It reminds me of the whole the quiet thing, right? I think somebody even brought that up of Kojima for Metal Gear Solid 5. Right, there was the character of Quiet, and you might have to correct me because I'm not a Metal Gear Solid guy.
Metal Gear,
yeah, but there was a controversy that happened when Phantom Pain was about to release, and they were showing off the characters, and you have Quiet, who is like a 20-something, very attractive lady who basically wears, it's like a bikini and combat boots, pretty much. Like she's she is very scantily clad like, is she mute or deaf or something?
No, she is not. She must remain mute to save her life.
Okay,
to preserve her
right.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there was basically a whole lot of like, what's with this like cheesecake, fan service character design here, not having seen the full context of the story. And Kojima had this very memed line that he tweeted out where he said something like, when you learn the true story of Quiet, you will regret your words and deeds, or something like that. And yes, okay, there's an in-story reason that explains that she has to doesn't she have some sort of like photosynthesis power or something, where like exposure to the air and to like water and stuff like that, she
breathes through her skin.
Yeah.
I think she not only breathes, but she also, I think, absorbs water, like her body takes in water through her skin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's all, that's like, okay, that's really interesting. And that's an in character, it's an in story rationale for, the character's design and the presentation. But that's still a separate conversation from, what is it that you're trying as a creator, as a creative, designer, as an illustrator in this case, what is the effect that you're trying to have on your audience, right? Because, even if it's intended, the impact on the audience is to say like, oh, check it out, like this is, like she's hot, she's not wearing many clothes, that's meant to be enticing, it's meant to be titillating, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but that they're perfectly valid reasons for people to enjoy stuff like that. But also, when it's in the case of Bonnie, when it's a character who is revealed to be underage, I think it does, it gets a little messy. And particularly with some of the things that that Oda's, not him personally, but some of his acquaintances, some of the twists and turns of who he associates with, the people that are close friends or mentors to him, in terms of other artists. It doesn't look good in that, in that context. Not that I think that this is necessarily revealing of Oda's personal, tastes or whatever. But it gets a little messy. I don't know if you had any thoughts about this at all. It took me a while. It wasn't necessarily the first thing that popped into my head when I got the confirmation about Bonnie's age. But the more you think about it, the more questions it kind of raises, I do think.
So I think overall, how can I put this? I've been dreading this conversation the entire week.
Yeah, right.
Because there is no good single thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I think, first, I think that everybody who feels like this makes them uncomfortable, I think that's a completely valid reason. There are things that make me feel uncomfortable in stories that people have. It affects them zero. They read it and it doesn't do anything to them. To me, it feels like I'm being attacked, or like it makes me feel uncomfortable, or I don't really like to see characters doing these types of things. But I also have to understand that there are people who do enjoy that, and therefore whatever this is whatever the medium is, or a media, whatever the media is, it's probably not for me. And that's for all sorts of things, morally or ethically or religious or sexually. It does or it doesn't do a thing for me, and therefore, okay, this is either for me or it's not for me. I am not everybody, so I have to accept that. Now, on the large, when you look at this, on the large, how is this affecting people? Is it going to create a poor image in the media? How is it going to affect the reader? Once again, I see nothing from the Japan side in terms of like, oh, we interpreted this way, or we're upset at Oda for doing this, or it's always the contrary. Is the fandom, even the female fandom, have nothing but praise, and like it's just one of those like, oh, she was 12, okay, kind of thing. Now, I will not say what the appropriate response is, that anybody should have a response. Only that this will affect different people in different ways.
Yeah.
And however it affects the reader is valid for that person. And however they feel, the frustrations they feel, if they feel expressing that makes them feel better, or it gives them some sort of peace, or lets them deal with this, I have nothing against that. If people want to listen to that and boost that, by all means. So I guess that's kind of a preface for that. Like, I'm not like, you can't criticize Oda for that, or you can't say, I don't feel that way. What I do feel is that it doesn't impact me that way. I personally don't feel anything like that. If we want to get into like in-universe reasons for it, is when she changes ages, does she age up mentally as well? Does she are there certain aspects of reasoning and logic that she gains that she doesn't have? Are there certain social cues that she doesn't pick up? It would seem that her aspects of childishness are preserved when she gets older. That was the whole bugs thing, is ew, bugs, and like eating all the food. She was like, oh, yummy, yummy food. Because that's what a 12-year-old would do. They would stuff their faces. Maybe they do like bugs, or maybe they hate bugs, right? A lot of that does carry through. On the other hand, you do see, and this is also what's super important, is the tomboyishness. And there is a lot of tomboyishness to the point where it ceases to be tomboyishness and becomes, holy shit, she is a leader. And she is a true pirate captain, and she has seen some shit in her life that has made her, in certain ways, far more mature than some of her peers. Oh, gross, Greg. Is Greg trying to say she's a mature 12-year-old, so it's okay? I'm not saying that. I'm saying mentally what she's experienced, is she on par with thought processes that are of adults? I'm not saying is that okay to represent her the way she is. What I am suggesting is maybe she's aware of how she presents herself, and maybe she does not care. The whole T-shirt thing, taking off the shirt. I work with children. I mean, that I'm a elementary school teacher. I work with 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 10-year-olds, and 9-year-olds every day. And at Japanese schools, from around 4th grade or so is where they start separating the kids for changing for gym class. So she absolutely would have, at age 12, that kind of like knowledge of like, this is not socially proper. Like, I shouldn't socially be doing this. So that's what raises my eyebrow there, is in like, okay, is that part of being tomboy, or is that part of being socially awkward? Which brings me back to my kind of root for all of these depictions is the character okay with it? There are two pillars, I guess, for me when I read these things. Is the first is, am I horn dog over it? Because I think a lot of people who are upset by this, not everybody, a lot. I'm not saying majority. I'm saying there are many people who probably were upset over this, who were kind of horn dog over Bonnie for whatever reason, and finding this out has made them feel invalidated and uncomfortable, and that is number one. Like, am I horn dog for this? I have never seen the character in that way. I don't read it. I'm like, whoa, so sexy. Like, I think that was like, people were like, that was a broke the internet moment when she did that. And like in Japan too, like it was a big thing, like, holy shit, when she did the t-shirt thing. But for me, the reader, that's just kind of like, oh, Oda did a thing again. It's over my head. I don't read the series to be horny. And so I don't see it that way. I'm not saying it's invalid. I'm saying I don't read it that way. So it doesn't necessarily affect me that way. Do I think characters are attractive? Yes. But I'm not like, oh my God, she's so hot. Like, no, I'm sorry. It doesn't hit me that way. It doesn't come off that way. So that's the first pillar. Like, does it affect me personally that way? I think if it did hit me that way, I would feel differently about this. So I'm not saying that's an invalid thing. I'm saying it doesn't register under that for me. And the second pillar is the character comfortable with it themselves? in how they are being portrayed by the author. What drives me nuts are the series where they do like garbage with skirts, you know, and the kind of fan servicey crap, the coincidental kind of sexual harassment that you'll find in a lot of 80s,
Yes.
70s, 80s, 90s series.
It's called lucky skebe.
Lucky
It's
skebe?
the term where, like, oops, there was some happening. You know, you bumped into her and you both fell down on the ground around the corner, and look where your hand is touching. You know, stuff like that is you know, like lucky dirty acts. Basically, is the term that is often used.
All right. Those kind of events where the character, either, you know, regardless of gender, comes off as embarrassed or uncomfortable due to the situation, that drives me nuts. That immediately turns me off to whatever humor that author is trying to present, because you are portraying your character as uncomfortable in the situation they're in. So far, that does not seem to be the case with this character in the least. And whether that comes from maturity, the life experience that she's been through, the tomboyishness, whatever it is, she does not seem to be embarrassed, and therefore it does not make me feel odd. Now, if we started to get into some really dark kind of fantasy stuff with that in the main series, that would be problematic for me. That would make me feel disgust as a reader and as a fan of the series. But what you brought up, and is the thing, the aspect that I really don't have an answer for, is in your responsibility as a creator, are you bringing less good into the world by presenting your characters that way, regardless of how they feel, regardless of how they would act, because you know how the world is going to react to it? And I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
I really don't. All I can say is it does not affect me negatively because I don't view the character in a sexualized manner, and also because the character is okay with what they are doing. If either of those were not met, I would feel very strongly in the opposite direction. Right now, it's simply I understand how people feel, and I think that's a valid feeling to have about the series, regardless of how people in its home country feel. I don't want to make anyone feel invalidated. It's just that's kind of, I guess, my view, and my view is my view. I don't want to take anybody's away from their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mentioned in setting that up that, you know, that it wasn't necessarily a topic that I had thought about very much initially, and I think for similar reasons. You know, there are characters that Oda portrays. I mean, everybody kind of goes through that phase, especially I think even more so in the pre-time skip era, where it was just like a thing of like, okay, here's the hourglass, you know, female figure, right? And everyone has to have the same proportions, and everyone, you know, either it drives you off or you get used to it, and it's just like, okay, well, that's just how One Piece is going to be. That all of the female characters who are young and attractive have the same general figure, and you know, and I think within that context, like he starts to separate between, like, here are the characters that are kind of intended to be sexy, right? Like Nami uses her beauty as like a weapon often. You know, she is the cat burglar, as they say, and will use her wiles to you know, to get people off guard and stuff like that. And then there are other characters where it doesn't really seem to be part of the equation. And I was remembering back in that, you know, the Shabondi introduction at the time, and probably we probably both had kind of a similar reaction, which is like, okay, well, here's another character. She's interesting because she's like eating a lot and is kind of acting in an off-putting way, but otherwise, a lot of her design elements they don't necessarily stand out that much to me. And I think that kind of that image carried over through a lot of her subsequent appearances until she finally came back into the story. And I never, again, like kind of like what you were saying, like she never really struck me as a character who was intriguing in that particular light, or that Oda was kind of trying to go for that. And I think maybe subconsciously, maybe I was picking up on the kind of the characterization that he was working on with her, of like, that she acts off-putting and is kind of rambunctious in certain ways, that that is intentional because it reflects who she actually is on the inside. And then that's not to like pat myself on the back for like not falling into the trap or whatever, but I think I think my personal read, or my experience with how I thought about Bonnie as a character probably matches a lot of yours, just in terms of the way that I approached her as a character, and the way that she struck me as a reader. So it did take me a while before I was like, well, some of these scenes, might come across as a little exploitative from certain angles, in terms of the way that Oda can use her as a character to achieve a certain effect on the readers. But I did feel like it, like it would be maybe a little bit disingenuous of us not to at least to talk about that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I'm sorry. I would have brought it up for the chapter, but I was almost like certain we were going to get an SGS question about it, so I was holding that back. But yeah. Thank you for bringing it up here.
Yes. So having gone through that, I think let's see. I think we have a few questions, not very much. So I think we should be able to get through those. And
cool beans.
So let's take another quick ad break, and we'll get into the questions. And we're back. And now it is time for the question and answer part of the SGS. So,
oof, thank God, after that, like after school special segment on the SGS. Yeah. Oof, all
right. We will start with our Patreon Discord section, our SGS channel on the One Piece Podcast Discord, where you too can submit your questions if you are a Patreon member. We'll start with Felix Cutler, who says, Dear SBS, Greg, first of all, I hope your wife slept well while listening to the last SGS episode. Next.
Thank you.
Next up, a few questions off the top of my head. So I guess we'll go through these in order. Would you prefer knowing or not knowing who the father of Bonnie is? I guess we're both in agreement that it is almost certainly not Kuma. This is, the unseen figure.
Yeah. Are you're going to stop at each segment? So should we address this now? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe this is too much like real world view, Greg, but like, does it matter? Because that person wasn't a father to her anyway. So
yeah.
I don't even know. Like if you're a reader who like wants to know for the case of revenge, like I get it, but I personally have no desire, because Kuma is, for all intents and purposes, Bonnie's father. So
yeah, I don't think it would be important unless there's supposed to be some some sort of technical angle on it of like, oh, well, she has, this DNA. So therefore this is going to come into play. This is going to be a story reason for, why XYZ happens. I think we did see, you can look back at some interactions like with the one with Sakazuki and maybe, when she did her disguise thing in Mary Joa, where there might be some reasons, like because she has celestial dragon blood, that maybe some certain characters will be will react to her in certain ways, but I don't think that necessarily is going to hinge on who specifically the father was. I kind of doubt we're going to see it, and I think I agree with you. I don't really necessarily want to know.
I personally, Greg, doesn't want to know. Oda could make up a million reasons for it to be interesting.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, for all we know, right? She's Shanks' sister, right?
Yeah, sure.
So like he could definitely make up reasons for it to be interesting, but I don't have a burning desire to know. If he does cook up something really, plot relevant, like Steven suggested, cool, bonus. But I'm at this point, I'm really not. I'm out of the phase of One Piece where it's like who's related to who, or like, I wonder who the father is, because I guess maybe it's being a fan of Lost that kind of killed that in me. And this is not necessarily a knock on Lost, because the writers themselves were very open about this. But it's like, at what point do you stop asking questions like the whys? Like where do you like, well, why do you have this power? Why do you have that power? Where did that come from? Well, where did that come from? Where do you end it? Where does the reasoning stop? And Lost was kind of clever in that it was like, it's a higher power. Like, sorry, like that's we have no better way to explain it other than it is a higher power. So where did Bonnie come from? Where did the roots come from? Well, maybe she came from this person. All right, well, then what was that person's relation? How did they get to be to where they are? Now, what's cool about Oda is that sometimes, like Bonnie herself, he will go deep into that character. But I've also learned that, like, don't expect that kind of treatment. And in the long run, you will be pleasantly surprised, like what we're experiencing right now. So maybe that's the old man in me maybe coming up with that. That's the old man stance, but I don't necessarily need to know.
Yeah. Felix continues. As far as I know, Oda always tries to complete a few chapters before he takes a break and then starts on the next set of chapters. Are you guys able to shed some more light into how it works? I know Steven has spoken about this in the past. Well, I don't know how.
It's fewer than you think, folks.
Yeah, I mean,
fewer than like back at the start of the series, he was pretty open, and maybe he had like that stock room, but like, stuff is pretty down to the wire. Now you also have to consider that stuff is stuff. I use your words, Greg. His projects are going on simultaneously. And the same thing for the anime. I mean, the anime is handling dozens of episodes simultaneously. But Oda is handling several chapters at the same time. So you've got, while he's drawing, manuscripts for one, he's doing, rough ideas for maybe, probably I'd say 3 chapters down the line. So when he says he has, several done before a break, it's not as many as people think. There's not like a big stock to pull from. At this point, it's really down to like the week before he'll have an extra one done. That's pretty much what it's like. And of course, when we talk about release, things, we're talking about official release, not when you get the scans and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's he just I don't think there's any element of like stockpiling that's going on, in terms of because I feel like if that were to happen, they would just end up using up the stockpile, or you wouldn't have issues like with this last one where they just didn't finish the chapter, because they would just say, all right, well, go until you finish it, and then you'll have the break anyways, so we'll worry about that later on down the line. So that tells you, I think, that this is actually pretty close to the print deadline as far as when a chapter is actually finished. Felix continues a little bit more about serialization. Do you think it would be easier for Oda to work on a volume worth of chapters, give them to his editors, and they decide on what schedule they will be published in Jump? I think this is how Togashi drew the last Hunter x Hunter chapters, but I could be wrong. Do you know how many people work with Oda on the One Piece manga?
I think Oda would probably describe that as hell.
Yes, I agree.
I think that's probably the worst possible way that he would want to work on the series.
Yeah. Because it's all about the weekly grind. Yeah. It's all about the weekly format of, like, you have an idea for a chapter. You know how many scenes you're going to put into it. You know what note you're going to end it on to set up the next chapter. And that's the format that makes it all work. If you remove it from that, from that creative, set of circumstances, I think, it would be like, I don't know. It's like when, you have musicians who go into the studio and they don't have any limitations on what they can do, and as a result they'd never get anything done, because there's always more things you can do. There's always different ideas that you can try out, and then you suddenly realize, I don't know what, which to do. I don't have that deadline that says I have to be done with something by this point. And he's been doing it for almost 1,100 chapters now. Like, if anyone knows that process and how it works and feels comfortable at it inside and out, it's going to be Oda.
There's also the, and this is a bit, I don't know. I'm thinking of the word earthly, but it's
like practical.
Jikomon, maybe. Selfish is the first word I'm coming up with. Sorry, I can't think of a better one. But it's not actually selfish, but self-satisfaction, perhaps. Mm-hmm. There is the aspect of the week-to-week feedback that he is able to experience and then put into his work. When you have a TV show and you're making the TV show, you have zero idea how people are going to react to every episode of that TV show until after it airs.
Yeah.
And therefore, for that entire season, you are set. And it didn't always used to be this way. When you had extremely long television seasons, it was a little bit different. But you had zero idea how your watchers were going to react to an aspect. So, like, if you introduced a new character and they were unpopular, oh boy, get ready for a really rocky season because that person's sticking around.
Yeah.
In the week-to-week manga creation, that is not a problem. Oda is very much into experiencing the joys and the pitfalls of his fandom. And he looks very much at the fan response. And if he were to create an entire chapter, I think the motivation for him to get through that material would be almost zero. Because he has no idea how people are reacting to it. I'm not saying you have a bad idea. There are authors who might actually benefit from that. Togashi, for example, I think Togashi's issue is it takes him a very long time to do chapters. So, like, he's basically always working on the series, just not at a weekly pace. A a very humane pace for him, let's say.
Yeah.
And so that's how it works best for him. For Oda, I think his youth in the manga business compared to some of the golden era authors, it kind of shows in how he likes to see reader response. And I think trying to do a volume format would be hell on earth for him.
Yeah. And not even that, like, not even in the most direct sense of like, well, he introduces a character one chapter and then, everybody says, oh, this sucks. Like, he's not going to be like, oh, okay, whoops, I made a mistake. Let me remove that character in the next chapter. No, he's
not at all.
But he wants to absorb how they're feeling about it to help kind of inform his own, like, the eternal game that he is playing with his audience of like twisting their expectations and doing things. It's all kind of ingredients that get synthesized under the hood and is part of his overall creative process. I would imagine.
I've heard stories about, like, he'll put the final flourish on the final page or the final panel of a chapter, and he'll like exclaim like "Doda," as in like, talking to, how's that, like, to his fans, and they can't hear him, but like that's how much he enjoys creating that as he always calls it a festival. He enjoys creating that, like, festival like atmosphere in the fandom. So thank you for adding that. I was remiss to not have mentioned that.
How many people work with Oda on the One Piece manga? He's
it's a lot.
A lot, yeah.
It's a lot. You have the 4 like main assistants who've been with him, like, almost in some cases from the beginning. The pro assistants, and then you have the sketto, the
helpers,
the helpers, and the helpers are like, I think there's like, God, all said and done, there's probably like a dozen or so, who they can call in at any given time. But I think, but they don't. Okay, so I say like a dozen or so, right? It doesn't mean there's a dozen or so people there in the office working at any given time. It's, you have the 4 main assistants, and they'll call in maybe a number of the helpers, and then Oda has his workspace. So let's say, I don't know. And I feel okay, talking about this because they've already now, like, shown the workspace multiple times across the world. But let's see, 4, 8 is probably 10. Like, at a max, I think 12 people probably. I mean, you could have more easily, but I'd say it's probably a normal, smooth, buttery week would be maybe 10 plus Oda, maybe 10, 11 working on it. Yeah.
And I would imagine too, given the slightly more chaotic scheduling of One Piece, having come on and off and not even always the same number of weeks, that there's a lot of flexibility involved in terms of okay, that's why we just need 3 more people to come in this day, or to to help us finish this set of pages or whatever. Yes. And they have to play it by ear a lot. I imagine.
Precisely. It's it's not super fun for the assistants. Yeah. For the helpers, I should say. The assistants are set for life, but the helpers, it's a very rough job. But it's one that Oda went through himself. So
yeah, it's part of how the sausage gets made. Yeah. Felix ends, pleasant recording and sleep well at Greg's wife.
Thank you. I'll let her know.
Yeah. He followed it up a day later with what other... He links here to one of your columns, which is titled Where the Yokai Roam.
That's my latest one, I think. It's not the latest one I've written, but it's my latest one published.
That says, what other yokais do you have in mind for the other 4 elders and maybe even Emu? So is that something that you brought up in the column, I imagine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Boy. I mean, you have the Luffy 420 post, where he presented a number of ideas, himself. So I don't really want to go off of them, but like, I mean, assuming the the kanji relationship to the planets is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it's hard to say that what Luffy, anything other than what Luffy 420 presented would be the answer if the kanji are related to planets.
Yeah.
If not, if it's kind of a free for all and that was just kind of a happy coincidence, I mean, I would be really happy to see a Tengu in the series. I kind of happen to like Tengu myself, and the one fellow who looks like kind of like a chicken, I would be very happy if that were a Tengu. But that's just me hoping.
Yeah,
I don't know. I like the planet idea. I really do.
We got the Hitetsu with his Tengu mask.
Right.
That was brought up briefly, but obviously that is not a real
concept of Tengu exists in the world. So,
yes.
Like many other things at this point in the story, like, okay, so was there a devil fruit where that concept came from, or which came first, chicken or the egg?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I don't really have. I am not knowledgeable enough about yokai to elaborate on, all the stuff that has already been brought up. So I hate to be a wet blanket, but I don't think I have anything more interesting to add.
How about this? If the planet theory or whatever turns out to be correct, and also, by the way, I just pulling back the curtain on the article, I shirked away from writing details of planets. One, because I didn't want to steal anything from Luffy 420 because I can't credit him in the article.
Right.
I've credited Steven a number of times.
Oh, you have?
But yeah. With your permission, sir. I asked you. I'm like, hey, can I? You bring the sun up. Can I mention it? And you're like, yeah, sure. You make me look like crap. Now people are, Greg stole from Steven. Okay. But
I don't remember this.
What? Oh my God, dude! I've even mentioned you by name, and they were like, "Yeah, kore wa chotto," and I was like, "He is the official translator. Please put it in there." And they did it. So,
well, now I have to go back and the egg is on my face now.
Well, that said, it's been, my God, 10 years of columns now. So, like, I don't know.
Yeah, jeez.
There's a lot in there. We're almost on number 200, but what else? What was I talking about? Oh, if this yokai thing does kind of pan out, then I will try to get the yokai guy, the guy who does all the English speaker, who does all the yokai stuff, the artwork. He has a couple books out now. I do not remember his name, but as I've mentioned a couple times on the podcast, he actually lives a stone's throw down the street from me.
That's right.
So I will try to get him on, and maybe we can get some of his thoughts on yokai. I mean, not that it will necessarily be super One Piece, but like get a little bit of the history of them would be kind of neat. So
yeah,
let's try that if it works out.
Sounds good. Our next question here comes from Professional Payo. This is a good question here. Hey, SGS. So I'm sure you've heard the "How do I get friends into One Piece" question a bunch, but I think it's worth reevaluating. I used to tell people the best way to experience One Piece is with the manga, but as Greg has pointed out, it seems Oda has been rushing or skipping over story moments, leaning on the anime to fill in the gaps, as you will. Do you think the manga is no longer the pure, in quotes, OP experience as it used to be, and is it too much to ask of casuals to have read and watched OP to get the full picture?
Do you remember how many days it is? How many days is it you need to dedicate to watch it? Because they have it on YouTube now, right?
God. Right.
The One Piece anime, if you hadn't heard, is running on YouTube. Not for eternity, but for a limited time. It's running on a loop. I think until like maybe spring or something. And it just keeps going. And Shabondi, the blogger Shabondi, did the math or something, and he's like, the series can run 17 times, and I think something like that. And he went through all the math and like how many days, and it's like, I think it's like half a month that you just have to sit there and watch One Piece to have seen all of One Piece.
Yeah, I saw they had it related to that. I'm pretty sure I glanced at a promotional tweet or something something along those lines from one of the official accounts about that that running feed where it was like, hey, tune in at 7:00 on Saturday if you want to see, Zoro versus Mihawk or whatever. Basically setting up the highlights for when to tune in, which was an interesting way to promote the the endless stream.
But what if for me, and surely my thoughts on this will become outdated as we go through the ages, but for me, there will never be any other quintessential One Piece experience than the manga.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely been a thing. Like, this listener is referring to us talking about, this specific thing happening of Oda kind of allowing a little, a bit of a shortcut in the manga from time to time over some very small details, knowing that they can be elaborated on in a different medium. But I think it's fair to point out that these are still a very small handful of, again, if they were super important, he would dedicate the time to it. But it's kind of like, all right, I need to get from point A to point B, and I need to, to hit three topics or whatever. And sometimes you just kind of have to yada yada through the middle part. I feel like he's generally pretty intent on, on maximizing the use of his time.
I think what you'll see in the manga in the animation is a pleasant addition to what you've already experienced, a meaningful addition to what you've already experienced. I think the anime today gives people a reason to watch just beyond giving it color and sound that it was, largely in the past. Not that that's a bad thing, but there is now the extra pull of like, if you watch the anime, then you can also see this maybe tiny detail or this that you had missed. Well, that's well and good. But if you do miss the manga, then you have missed critical information on characters. I mean, that you would get from the SBS. Now, critical are my words. Oda would not consider that, a lot of the SBS material critical,
right?
Because he tries to keep out things that would not be as important or not be as impactful as having been in the story. So to him, it's all, SBS is just kind of like having fun. Whereas to us, when we read it, it informs us of what's going on. In addition to that, you'll also lose the cover art stories. And I do have a friend actually who is caught up to the main series, and has read a good deal of the series, but never actually bothered to read the cover stories, and didn't even know that was a thing because he was going through the comic so quickly that he just figured it was all artwork and never even bothered to read them. So he has no idea about all this stuff. So we'll have conversations, and he'll just be like, wait, Anel is around?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you feel like you're going to miss out on like backstories and addition, I think there's flavor that you might be missing. Is that kind of flavor important to you as a fan? If you weigh that as more important, then yes. For me, it is not, and the manga will always be the one that you can pick up, read at your own pace, and put down at any time. Whereas the anime is going to be a significant amount of time dedicated to the same amount of material that you could get through very quickly in the comic. So how important is your time to you? If time is your is a currency to you, then which one would you prefer to invest in? That's maybe a little bit too pragmatic for a lot of the maybe the younger fans or the younger listeners, which I apologize for, but that's I guess my view on it.
Yeah. I think it's like I said earlier, it's good to put into context that the stuff we've been remarking on, we're remarking on it because it is slightly different than the way that he has done it in the past in terms of allowing for small material to be elaborated on in the anime, but in the big scheme of things, it is all very minor and fairly rare, so I don't think it's something that either of us is like particularly concerned about as far as damaging the experience of the manga. That's going to do it for the Patreon questions, but we do have some more on Twitter, thanks to the One Piece podcast account. So I'm going to go over there. Let's see. Here's an interesting one. Connor Tierney at Connor Tierney 57 says, I'd like to know what's a Gear 5 effect that hasn't appeared in the manga that you'd like to see. I personally want to see Luffy bouncing off of panel borders a la Goku in the original Dragon Ball manga.
That's a pretty baller idea.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to see, and this is really fourth wall breaky, but it would be super ballsy and super cool. Oh man, I don't know if you could do that. Like they're having fun in the anime, right? Like the anime, they're having a good amount of fourth wall breaking stuff, and even with the toys, right? Like he's in some of the figures, he's like messing with the One Piece logo and stuff, which is really cool. But in the manga, he's kept it fairly linear, right? Like, there hasn't been a lot of like severe fourth wall breaking. So if he has the guts for it, I would love to see Luffy jumping in from one page into the next. That would be insane.
Yeah, you're right that Oda definitely stays very like he stays very tight to the presentation, the way that he has always kind of drawn the manga, and has not bent those rules, except in terms of like fourth wall breaking stuff, except for like very minor and kind of random sight gags, not even necessarily related to paneling, but like I'm remembering like there was the thing with the go gorilla where he wrote like he had the the go sound effect, and then he wrote Rilla on the fist of the gorilla, and stuff like that. But he's never really gone and smacked you in the face with stuff like that, which is why it's sort of like it's like I can't see him doing it, but that's what would make it so effective if he actually did it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could see it possibly happening like when it is like, okay, I've run through the whole gamut of like ideas for kind of wacky stuff that I could do, that I've seen in cartoons or have thought up as fun ideas. So, what else is there? How can I, raise the stakes a little bit? I could see him maybe arriving at that thought process, but it doesn't, at this point, it does not seem like something that he is for sure going to do. But that would be cool.
Yeah. I would like, if he's going to do it, that's how I'd like to see it. But we'll see.
Yeah. This one is this is kind of an ongoing thing because I feel like it gets brought up fairly often, and you have to keep telling people to wait. But I'll read this one. MH at Dapper Steve says, we've entered the so-called final saga. In your opinion, how many chapters roughly from now are needed at a minimum to bring One Piece to a satisfying conclusion that checks at least all the big boxes of things fans can reasonably expect to be explored or answered? Yeah.
I will literally using that exact same terminology. I will go over the checkboxes that I think need to be filled when what I'm working on does come out. And if you don't know, what I'm working on is a kind of a review looking at how much longer I think One Piece has to go, how much longevity it has, and it's I've been slacking as of late, but it is quite long, and it's still going to take me quite a good amount of time to work on it. But I will go into that specific topic and go over those checkboxes one at a time. That's something I've already written.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I knew that Greg had put a significant amount of time and thought into this. For me, having not considered it in this particular term, just in terms of how many chapters roughly, I think to hit all the big points and have them not feel like they're necessarily being rushed, I could see another 200 chapters being a healthy chunk that is not too long, that, you know, we could wrap up all of this stuff. He may be thinking a lot shorter, I don't know, but you know, at this point, that's kind of how I'm feeling about it. So having gotten that out of the way, a couple more questions here. At Pau Hewlatini says, I hope we get more Ginny because she went so fast. A little broken heart emoji. There was a time I wished for Bonnie to join the crew, but even now, knowing more, I miss someone else more terribly. Do you think it's possible that Carrot is hiding on the Sunny? Can we take her to the moon with us? That
Clever.
would be fun. Yeah.
Clever. Ah, boy.
That's a good, you know what? If that hasn't happened, because I know that when they get the reader requests with the, you know, character and animal, that they just go in one ear and out the other. I forget about them all the time. But if it hasn't been done, I feel like we need to have a Carrot doing something with rabbits on the moon prompt for Oda to draw. Because I was
just thinking about them. You know, it's funny. I was, I do think about the moon stuff, you know, a lot, as I have for more than a decade now. But what was I trying to remember? I didn't want to look something up. I'm getting very lazy with my One Piece-ness now, and I didn't want to look up the scene where we get a brief look at the insides of the spacey mechanism, like their inner workings, and I think all of them. Oda made a point of depicting all of them with hats and caps on. So you don't see their heads. You don't see their exposed heads. And they look like these little like animals, right? Like these little creatures.
Yeah.
My thought is, are all of them actually mechanical rabbits? Like, since they're all wearing hats, if they take those hats off, do they have rabbit-like ears? And I think in one scene where I think the doctor is working on it, and it's like he has its face off, and like you see all the mechanics going on inside. I think you get a brief view of like the skull, and like it doesn't show anything. But if I recall correctly, it's vague enough that like Oda, being Oda, could have been like, yeah, it was just from this angle, you didn't see it, or it's concealed this way, or it's just a rough depiction, so I didn't draw them, or blah blah blah. But that has been my idea, is that all of the species are actually rabbits. So you've got all the rabbits on the moon.
I thought you were going to take it that, like, inside their head, that's where the little tiny rabbits are piloting the automatons. Yeah.
Quaid. Little parasite rabbits living inside them, pulling mechanics. No, okay, but yeah, that would be cute to me. That's an excellent idea. That would be fun, and that's right up Oda's alley for being fun.
Yeah, and like folklore related, you know, it would be very familiar. Obviously, very very comfortable topic for Japanese people with the rabbits on the moon and all that.
Yep, I like it. Clever idea. Whether it happens or not, I don't know, but that is clever thinking.
Yes. Lastly, we do have we have a series of questions from B at Champagne Brokey. He says, "I'm going to ask a lot, and you can choose what you want to answer." And since we have, indeed, as predicted, gone on a good fair amount at this point, I'll just pick one. And I'm interested in this one. A buggy thought Captain John's treasure was on a skull island. Hachinosu, the pirate island, has a skull island too. Is Captain John's treasure there, and what do you think it is? What will Crossguild's role be in the story too?
Yeah, I mean, everything seems to be pointing at the idea that if not there, then in the vicinity. Also, why is the giant chain on it? And is the so-called rumored Davy Jones's locker, is that around there as well? Is it possibly in the locker itself? Is that actually Davy Jones? Like, does the skull lead to Davy Jones's locker down below under the sea? Right? Everything seems to be leading there. So yes, that does seem to be where the story is headed. What could it be? Oh, man, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to say actual treasure. So, like, maybe if the crew at some point interacts with it, maybe they could get some actual treasure, and Luffy can do his Takara Barai. Finally,
yes, his pay off his treasure tab. That's right.
Yeah. So that would be neat, but like, there's just so much that it could be or not be.
Yeah, it's like, it's always been, it's almost like a gag thing. Like, it's just a recurring thing particularly with Buggy, being after Captain John's treasure. So it could just be like, oh, there's going to be some kind of gag answer to it. But I do think it would also be in character for Buggy in general, that like, he thinks he's chasing, gold and riches. And then, what if it turns out that is actually something very crucial to the, the road poneglyphs, or the lodestar, all that stuff, where it's going to be part of the quest for the One Piece. And so, much like Buggy himself, it's actually super crucial and central to the story, but it's not really what he was looking for or what he thought he was getting.
Steven, wait, yeah. I've got it.
Am I getting too close here?
No, oh my God, Steven, what if Buggy actually manages to get it, and Captain John treasure is a note saying it's the friends you made along the way. not the One Piece, but Captain John's treasure. Oh my God, that would be perfect. That would be hilarious. If Buggy finally gets it, and it's the friends you made along the way. Oh my God. That would be the ultimate comeuppance. And he's made so many friends along the way from different walks of life.
He's just going to turn and see, Mihawk and Crocodile looking at him with unbridled annoyance.
Death eyes, death stare. Oh, yeah. And have that be, and have it just be the ultimate joke, is like, because obviously that is not the One Piece. But to have that be it, oh my God. And because it's it does seem like it's at Kaizo Kojima. I mean, given that. So, but like, to have it be at Kaizo Kojima, where you're supposed to have the crews that are all like, friendly and Nakayoshi and all that stuff together, to be like, yes, it's the pirate crew friends that you made. Oh, I love it. It's so stupid. It works.
Yep. Just might work. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to round it off for today. So why don't we, of course, thank you all for your questions. We always appreciate it. Keep them coming. We love to stockpile these and go through them when we get the chance. So please do not be shy about sending in your questions. And having said that, why don't we round this show off?
Let's do it.
This has been the One Piece Podcast, episode 796 for the week of Monday, November 20th, 2023.
Well, Stephen, we did it. We wanted to keep the episode short, and just under 2.5 hours. Look at this.
That's right.
We are pros at this.
We're getting better every time.
Someday.
Another
How's your
successful.
voice?
We'll see. I'm going to go take a lozenge after this. We'll see how I'm feeling at then.
Sorry, I'm thinking.
My throat is feeling like the art in Oda's recent chapter. A little bit scratchy. That's another successful SGS in the book. Thank you so much for listening. We will have our regularly scheduled episode back next week. Let me see. I don't recall who is going to be on, who we have as a guest. So I guess you'll just have to find that out the old-fashioned way, and see who it is. But I'm sure it will be exciting. We'll be back with chapter 1099 and some more anime stuff. I'm sure next week. Also listen to 4Kids Flashback, which is Steve's new podcast with Tara Sands, a voice actor from 4Kids, as they continuing their quest to interview everyone involved in all 4Kids stuff from the 2000s. That should be a really fun podcast to listen to. I'm very excited to get into those. Otherwise than that, Greg, how can the people find you?
You can find me wherever the wind blows to the east.
Very nice.
And on that site that let's just say there's an @ mark and Ochimusha 108.
That works. And you can find me on Blue Sky at Stephen Paul, at bluesky.social.whatever. Yes, contact me there if you would like. Get ready for more One Piece. Your regularly scheduled One Piece podcast next week. As always, Greg, a great pleasure to be talking with you.
The pleasure was all mine. Take care of that voice, and
yes, we'll do.
And give Simba some extra catnip for me.
Yeah. He was apparently we had family members cat sitting him while we were on our vacation, and by all accounts, he was a very good boy, which was quite a surprise to me. But I don't know. Maybe there's something I don't know about him. He's just been punking me all along with his waking me up in the middle of the night and stuff like that. Pet ownership, it's great. Wouldn't trade anything for it.
Good night, everybody.